hum of the engines was normal, routine. Passengers sat quietly in seat 17A, her small hands clutching the armrests as clouds streaked past the window. She was just another kid on a transcontinental flight, quiet, unassuming, invisible. But the world outside the cabin was far from ordinary. In the sky above, two F-22 Raptors sliced through the stratosphere, their radar systems lighting up with something unusual. Military pilots, trained to react in milliseconds, noticed a blip, a commercial jet deviating slightly from its assigned flight path. "Check 17A," said Lieutenant Commander Harris, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the cockpit instruments. "There's something about that seat." The call sign, Falcon. The word sent a ripple of recognition through both pilots. Memories they thought long buried resurfaced. Falcon, a name whispered in the halls of Top Gun. A name associated with precision, courage, and an uncanny ability to handle aircraft in situations no one else could. Meanwhile, inside the cabin, the kid sensed something was wrong. The captain's voice, calm yet strained, came through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a minor technical issue. Please remain seated." The minor issue quickly became anything but. Alarms blared, the cabin shuddered, and oxygen masks dropped. Panic surged among passengers. And yet in seat 17A, the kid's eyes widened with a strange focus, a clarity far beyond her years. She wasn't just a kid anymore. Falcon, the name the pilots murmured, was awakening. Her hands instinctively moved over the controls, recalling training she had never publicly received. A lifetime of secret lessons, simulations, and test flights flashed through her mind in an instant. Back in the sky, the F-22 pilots changed course. They weren't here to intercept, they were here to assist. One pilot muttered under his breath, "She's handling it." "She is Falcon." The cabin tilted violently. Turbulence became a storm, and with every second, the stakes soared higher. The passenger's fear was palpable, but the girl's calm was magnetic. She assessed the situation, calculated trajectories, and prepared for maneuvers that would challenge even the most seasoned aviators. This was the moment her legend would begin. The kid in seat 17A was no longer just a passenger. She was the hero, the Falcon, destined to prove that courage isn't measured by age, it's measured by heart and instinct. The cabin rocked violently. Oxygen masks swung, passengers screamed, and the overhead bins rattled as the plane shuddered. Yet in seat 17A, the girl's gaze was razor sharp. Her hands hovered over the controls almost instinctively, as if her body knew what her mind hadn't yet fully realized. The intercom crackled. The voice of the first F-22 pilot, Lieutenant Commander Harris, came through an emergency frequency. "Falcon, this is Red Eagle. We're on your 6. Follow our guidance and stabilize the plane. Do you read?" A flash of recognition crossed her eyes. "They know me. They know who I am." She gripped the yoke, fingers trembling for just a moment before settling into confident precision. "Copy that. Stabilizing now," she responded, her voice calm, betraying none of the fear inside. Above them, the F-22s flanked the commercial jet, forming a protective wedge. Harris's voice guided her through maneuvers impossible for a regular civilian pilot. Banking, adjusting altitude, compensating for turbulence, and counteracting the failing systems on board. "Level off at 32,000 feet, Harris instructed. "Use manual override, trust your instincts." She nodded, even though he couldn't see her. Every movement was a dance of precision. The plane tilted dangerously, but under her control it responded beautifully. Passengers' screams turned into gasps of awe as they felt the craft slowly regain stability. Through the windshield, the sun gleamed on the sleek F-22s. They were not just escorts, they were mentors, watching over their protege as she defied every expectation of what a child could do. Inside the cockpit, the girl's mind raced. Alarms screamed for attention. Hydraulic pressure dropping, fuel imbalance warning, autopilot offline. She processed each warning like a seasoned pilot, moving switches, pulling levers, and making calculations at lightning speed. Harris broke the silence, his voice steady but urgent. "Falcon, there's a mountain range ahead. You'll need to bank sharply, 110 degrees right, then climb. Can you handle it?" A tiny smile appeared on her lips. "Affirmative," she said almost to herself. She twisted the yoke, countering gravity, navigating the jet with an elegance that belied her age. The passengers felt it. A subtle tilt, a whisper of control, and then calm. The plane leveled out smooth as silk, The F-22 pilots exchanged stunned glances. She's actually doing it, muttered one. She's Falcon. The realization hit both the pilots and the passengers. The kid in seat 17A was not only alive in the cockpit, she was alive as a hero. Every calculation, every maneuver, every heartbeat was a step toward survival, not just for herself but for everyone aboard. And above the clouds, the sky seemed to acknowledge her. The F-22s maintained their vigil, shadows dancing across the fuselage, guiding her through the storm. For the first time, the world outside Seat 17A knew. A legend was awakening. Falcon was in command. If you want, I can continue part 3 next, where she faces the critical emergency moment, perhaps the landing challenge or a final high-stakes maneuver, fully cementing her hero status. The alarms blared louder now, echoing through the cabin like a warning drum. Hydraulic systems were failing faster than anyone could calculate. The engines shuddered under strain. Outside, storm clouds churned like dark waves, lightning illuminating the terrified faces of passengers. In seat 17A, Falcon's hands were steady. Every nerve, every instinct, every secret lesson she'd trained for, or rather had lived in her hidden past, flared into action. She was no longer just a child. She was a force, precise, fearless, and unyielding. Falcon, you have one chance, Lieutenant Commander Harris's voice came through. We can't hold them here forever. You'll need to execute a vertical climb, then a controlled descent to clear the ridge. It's high risk, she swallowed. Her heart raced, but her mind was crystal clear. Understood. Initiating maneuver now, she said, gripping the yoke like it was an extension of herself. The plane pitched upward violently, almost scraping the clouds. Lightning streaked dangerously close, illuminating the interior in brief, stark flashes. She pulled back, calculated, adjusted the throttle, and felt the aircraft respond as though it obeyed her very will. Below, the F-22s mirrored her movements, shielding her from worst of the wind shear and guiding her path. Harris's voice was calm but intense. You're halfway through. Watch the left engine, she's overheating. Falcon's eyes darted to the warning lights. With a flick, she balanced the power, banking the jet at a daring angle. The passengers screamed, then gasped in awe as the cabin leveled and the storm seemed to part just enough to give her a narrow path. Almost there, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The ridge loomed ahead, sharp and merciless. A regular pilot would never attempt it, but Falcon calculated the trajectory, factoring in weight, wind, turbulence, and failing hydraulics. She pulled up, twisted the yoke, and the plane soared over the edge, clearing the mountain ridge by mere feet. A collective exhale swept through the cabin. Parents hugged children, flight attendants wept, and for a moment the world held its breath. Through the emergency frequency, Harris broke the silence. His voice trembled slightly with awe. Falcon, you did it. You saved us all. She allowed herself a tiny smile. The plane was stabilized. The storm still raged outside, but inside Seat 17A, a legend had been born. She wasn't just a passenger anymore, she was Falcon, the kid who became a hero. As the F-22 pilots saluted in formation, the commercial jet cruised safely, descending toward clear skies and eventual landing. The cabin erupted in cheers, clapping and tears mixing in a whirlwind of relief. Falcon leaned back in her seat, hands still trembling slightly, but her eyes reflected something far larger than fear or exhaustion. Courage, mastery, and a destiny fulfilled. The pilots whispered among themselves, watching her through their radar and external cams. We thought the stories were myths, but she's real, Falcon, she's real. And so, the skies of 2025 had a new hero. A kid in seat 17A had reminded the world that sometimes legends don't wear medals. They sit quietly, waiting for the right moment to soar. The sun had begun to set, casting an orange glow across the storm-scarred horizon. The jet, now stabilized, was beginning its descent toward the nearest airport. But stabilization didn't mean safety. Every second mattered. Every calculation had to be perfect. Falcon leaned forward, scanning the control panel like a master chess player eyeing the board. Hydraulic pressure was still unstable, fuel levels uneven, and the autopilot offline. One wrong move now could cost hundreds of lives. Falcon, the runway is clear, but crosswinds are extreme. Lieutenant Commander Harris said, you'll need to account for lateral drift and turbulence. Do not rely on standard descent rates. You'll need to adjust in real time. Her hands moved with precision. She calculated angles, adjusted flaps, monitored engine output, and coordinated with air traffic control through the emergency frequency. Each second was measured, each adjustment critical. Passengers had begun to notice something extraordinary. Flight attendants whispered nervously among themselves, glancing at Seat 17A. How could a kid barely older than a teen remain so calm? Some even began recording videos on their phones, capturing history in the making. The plane began to descend rapidly toward the airport. Winds howled, gusts battering the fuselage. Falcon countered each shift with micro-adjustments, her instincts guiding the craft through invisible channels of air. The F-22 pilots flanked the jet, scanning the perimeter and relaying real-time feedback. Falcon, 200 feet to the glide slope. Harris warned. Adjust pitch by 3 degrees. We're with you. She nodded subtly, eyes fixed ahead. She adjusted the yoke, then the throttle, feeling the aircraft respond like an extension of herself. The runway lights emerged through the haze, small beacons of hope guiding the jet safely. Passengers' screams and nervous chatter had now turned into stunned silence. Everyone was watching, breath held as a kid, just a kid, handled what seasoned pilots might have deemed impossible. "Falcon, you're doing it," Harris said, his voice betraying awe. "Prepare for flare, 3 seconds." Falcon's fingers tightened on the controls. The plane's nose lifted slightly, softening the impending touchdown. Tires kissed the runway with a controlled thud, not a jolt. The fuselage shuddered gently as though acknowledging her mastery. The jet taxied smoothly, slowed, and came to a stop. The passengers erupted in applause, tears streaming, hands shaking. Flight attendants rushed to the cockpit, faces a mixture of shock and reverence. Falcon leaned back, exhaling deeply. She had done it. Against odds, against fear, against expectations, she had transformed from a kid in seat 17A to the pilot who saved everyone on board. Outside, the F-22 pilots hovered for a moment before dispersing, saluting silently. In that instant, the legend of Falcon had been cemented, not in medals or headlines, but in the awe of those who had witnessed it firsthand.